go too much lower, and so this is we're really starting to see some unprecedented times and things that we should definitely talk about.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory, and today is Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2020. And since the Federal Reserve saw fit to have an emergency Fed rate cut, I saw fit to have an emergency interview with somebody who I highly respect and who does some incredible free reports. And we were supposed to be on the horn a couple of weeks ago, and things kind of fell apart. I got sick, he got sick, and so everything kind of got put on the shelf for a minute, and it's worked out for the best. And Kenneth Aemduri is a serial entrepreneur. He, like I said, he creates some incredible reports, and I feel confident that he's got one in the hopper right now. And Kenneth, you can find all of his work, including his reports, over at crushthestreet.com. And Kenneth Aemduri, welcome back to the Daily Coin.
Thank you for having me back on the show, Rory, and thanks for accommodating me. Feeling a lot better, and lots to discuss today. That's for sure.
Yeah, we got a lot on the agenda, and I wanted to start with, I know that, like I said in the intro there, that you produce these reports that are really helpful to people that are looking to either make money or protect their wealth. And what's your latest? What are you working on right now?
Well, we just released a new report talking about the coronavirus, and really, we wanted to create something that was up to date, that was constantly evolving, and we have a team over at Crush the Street that is, working on this and honing in on this. Trader Steph specifically has just been all over the coronavirus updates and really educating, a real asset to our community at Crush the Street. And the link to the report and the updates is going to be at crushthestreet.com/virus. And I highly recommend people to go there, check it out. We're going to be having her links as well at that specific page for people to constantly be getting the updates on what is going on with the coronavirus. And of course, there's some opportunities for people to protect themselves, because we're going to be discussing precious metals in this environment. We're going to be discussing the markets, and things are turning on a dime.
They are.
I'll tell you what, Rory, I was at the market this morning, just continuing to add to the storage, the food supplies, and
Yep.
the shelves are looking a little bit bare. I wanted to order another emergency supply kit. The company I went to, 8 weeks plus out and
Wow.
counting. A few weeks ago, it was they were getting 10x demand for their supplies, for their just because people were reacting to the coronavirus. Just this last week, with the latest news, they're up 100x.
Oh my
in
goodness.
terms of their demand. So
Wow.
I think 8 weeks is going to be optimistic, to be honest with you. That was their latest, estimation for when to get this and when to be prepared, or when people will receive their stuff. So I think it's a sign for people to get prepared and be ready for what is coming, because things are ramping up very quickly. I mean, you see what happens with the stock market. You see how quickly things turn in gold. How quickly supply chains can be disrupted.
Yep.
I don't think most of us have a concept, but I mean, we were just talking a few weeks ago about how, the stock market just keeps going up.
Yes.
Like nothing seems to derail it. And here we are. Everyone's kind of looking at each other going, what is going on? I mean, how quickly that happened, right? And so this is why it's important to have these interviews.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've discussed. You and I have discussed together and individually how things have the potential to come as a thief in the night. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now with this situation. We've been talking for years about the black swan. It's called a black swan because no one knows what it's going to be. And if you point at a particular event or situation or something, then that's not a black swan. But when you have something like this virus that pops up out of the blue and it is literally going global, that's the very definition of a black swan, and that's why it's important for people to take care of themselves, to continually add to their stack, to continually, and their stack being uh, safety, their stack being food and water, their stack being gold and silver, their stack being wealth protection, their stack being all of these things that protect your family and yourself and that keep you safe, period. It's not just a stack of gold and silver. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, you have to look at the whole picture of what's actually happening and what what is engulfs your particular world. What fits in my world, and what do I need in order to protect my family and myself? And I'm really glad to hear you saying that you were at the market this morning and giving, that real world update. And normally, Kenneth, I usually pause a day or so before I publish these interviews because it takes a minute to get everything pulled together and listen to it again. But I'm going to release this today because the information is so timely. And like I said, we were this emergency, so this quote, emergency 50 bips rate cut by the Federal Reserve. To me, back in October of 2019, I said that there was going to be that the Fed was actually going to cut a full point by the end of the first quarter of 2020. And here we are. They cut 25 points and 25 bips in October. Now they've cut 50 bips today. I'm guessing that they're going to do another 25 at the next meeting. Do you think that I'm out on a rail here, or do you think that that is a distinct possibility?
I think you're 100% spot on. I think what we're seeing is a reaction to this Black Swan event. But again, one thing I would say, and I agree with Peter Schiff on this, is we were in a bubble. We were in an everything bubble, and we've talked about that before in previous interviews. This is just the pin for this bubble. And one thing that I know we've talked about, or actually, again, I'll bring up Trader Steph once again. She's been so spot on. But just a couple weeks ago, she put in one of her updates. Depending on how bad the government deems this to be, or the Federal Reserve deems this coronavirus to be, we will see a rate cut. And sure enough, we saw that today. So for me, I think this whole virus that we're seeing right now has the potential to become a pandemic, even despite them trying to contain the narrative. I mean, YouTube, you've seen this. If you put coronavirus in the YouTube name, or, post something with coronavirus on Google, these articles are getting shadow banned. And
Yes.
These interviews are getting shadow banned because they're trying to contain the narrative of it. And, maybe there's some goods to that. They're trying to keep people from panicking and overreacting. And then there's also the containment of not wanting to tell the truth. And we know China's not telling the truth on all of their numbers, and who knows what's going on around the world right now with everything happening. So as far as rate cuts go, we're in a very serious situation. This bubble is deflating, and I think when we were going to have this conversation a couple weeks ago, they were meeting at Davos. They had just met at Davos,
Right.
The major world leaders. And they're talking about this being a Ponzi scheme, a bubble. Ray Dalio is saying cash is trash. And, as we are starting to see this whole thing unravel, these grandiose these people on this grandiose platform, they're preparing for the air to be let out of this bubble. And sure enough, we're starting to see that happen now. I don't think they're going to be able to contain the deflation of the asset prices, these financial assets, with some rate cuts. I mean, we're already at 1% now. I mean, how quickly did we unravel the tighter monetary policy, the higher interest rates? That only
Exactly.
lasted for so long. And if you consider the repo buying and everything that we've seen, it's just been such a reversal of course. And I believe this should be telling for what could come down the line for people, because we're much more out of control than we were in 2008 in containing this decade long bull market. I mean, we would need to go negative in terms of interest rates. And there's only so far natural economic laws will allow things to get out of hand. I mean, the manipulation of it is getting so far out of hand that we're not going to be able to contain this for too much longer. And so being in things like precious metals should be an absolute must in this environment.
I agree. I mean, at the end of last year, I said, and I actually wrote this in an article that I published. I said that that I felt like that in 2020, that there would be people that would know what I do, but that have never spoken to me about what I do or about the markets or anything. And I predicted that there would be several people throughout this year that would approach me and ask me about what's going on. That's already happened twice. And that happened before this situation with the coronavirus and all of that. And then I looked at the gold and silver charts, and gold and silver shot straight up earlier when this announcement was made. Looked like a rocket ship, because the lines were literally straight up. And it's been a while since we've seen that. So if you're not in the
What's
metals,
interesting, Rory, is it's really interesting that we are seeing gold and silver pull back. I mean, Friday we saw a massive pullback with gold and silver.
was it a
And I mean,
pullback or
that
was
was,
it a push down?
well, I mean, there's multiple things happening. I would definitely argue that it was a push down, but you have a combination of events taking place with stocks selling off the way they did. We saw this in 2008. There's a lot of margin calls, and all of a sudden, people are highly leveraged to the upside with their stock positions, and in such a panic, the banks are calling in their margins, and people have to sell whatever they can. So in an event like that, you have the baby getting thrown out with the bathwater,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. So you have that aspect happening. It was a month end situation, so a lot of the futures contracts, options contracts, they're getting closed out, they're getting settled. And then you also have algorithms starting to take into effect words like pandemic, coronavirus. I mean, these are starting to come up all over the place, and you have a lot of algos trading the markets with just in fractions of a second, which cause irrational things to happen. But I think as things start to normalize, the normalization will cause stocks to go lower and gold and silver to trend higher as the dust starts to settle. And we're seeing that now. And with Fed lowering interest rates, negative interest rates are in the equation once again. The dollar gets weaker, and we continue to trend higher with gold. I mean, gold is $1,600. It's hard to appreciate that after we saw it almost go to $1,700.
Right.
But it's very, very strong in this environment. The
Yes.
last time the Dow Jones was at these levels, gold was much lower. So, I mean, in relation to the Dow and the S&P 500, gold is holding up, and I believe it will hold up as a hedge against crisis as we move forward.
Yeah, and gold, like I said, both gold and silver just shot straight up. earlier, about an hour or so ago before we started this recording, and gold got up right at $35 to $40, shot straight up before it stopped to catch its breath. It's come down a little bit and it's starting to climb from here. And silver's done the same thing. Silver jumped up almost 50 cents or more than 50 cents before it caught its breath, and it's dropped a little bit and it's starting to climb again. If you look at the screen right there, you'll see these are our charts. These are the screen captures that I did during the recording of this so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I think that where would the metals be right now? I mean, Sunday before last, I should say, Kenneth, gold and silver went on the news of Italy's uh, having their first cases of coronavirus and everything going crazy in that country. Gold and silver Sunday night when the markets opened, they went ballistic. Monday, that continued. Monday afternoon is when the PPT stepped in and started putting the smackdown on it. Gold and silver continued to climb last week. And then on Friday, like you pointed out, you had margin calls, you had month end, you had all these things that came into play. And all of a sudden, instead of gold staring down 1800, it's below 1600, because when it first got crushed, it was staring at 1700 on Monday. It was looking 1700 in the face. And then they stepped in and crushed it below 1600 and put a 15 handle on it. They absolutely devastated silver from $18 down to $15. And they're just now starting to recover on even more bad news. I mean, how do we break this cycle? How do we get out of this? Because it's very frustrating to look at it and to go, I've got literally the whole world is falling apart. And these people continue to stamp down gold and silver in such a way that it's just disgusting. I mean,
Well, and one thing that I think we can appreciate is what happens in a market that is not being controlled by the paper trades. And, those are, rhodium. Rhodium
right,
does not have that aspect to it. And we've seen rhodium skyrocket. And when there's a real shortage of supply, uh, this is what is the potential. I mean, what, 4x, 5x? I mean, if you go back to the days of when gold was, at its low in 2015, I want to say rhodium was like at $600. We've 20x'd from the time gold bottomed till now when rhodium, and gold has not even doubled since
right.
then. So it's all a function of how far they can take the manipulation of natural economic law. And the more they stretch the situation, the more we get off kilter, the more we get further from equilibrium, the more that reversion back to the equilibrium is going to be that much more drastic, that much more dramatic. And I believe we're starting to get there. I mean, look at what we were just talking about, interest
That's
rates,
true.
how quickly we reverted back. It's only a matter of time when these situations surface. When something like a black swan coronavirus uh, exposes the fragility of the markets, and a black swan in the precious metals market where people want physical delivery of their metals. I know it's kind of hard to even imagine that happening, but if we get to a point who knows? Maybe it is the coronavirus. Maybe it's something like Bitcoin or something that really causes a panic, and people say, we need to have control over what we own. This could be what sends the markets into a panic, what causes gold and silver to spike. I mean, I believe gold and silver, I mean, gold can easily go to $5,000. I mean, that's not a stretch of the imagination, could go much higher than that. Silver, my goodness. I mean, all-time highs, absolutely. I mean, $100, $200 silver is not out of the question. I mean, if you start looking at all of the historical ratios, I mean, the case is there that it can go way higher than that. Um, I mean, what, silver's at a 95-to-1 ratio for gold? I mean, we're getting super extreme, and just trading the gold to silver ratio right now could be extremely lucrative. Selling your gold and buying silver, I'm not recommending that people go and do that. It's a little speculative if you ask me. I mean, appreciate the fact that you own gold and sit on that, but just the reversion of that ratio, moving a little, 60-to-1, 50-to-1, could be a massive move for silver investors. So that's kind of where I am with that. I believe that the opportunity is there, and we are starting to see things surface, the underlying fragilities that are in the underlying market. And if you're prepared for that, you won't be in the panic mode. Going back to being at the grocery store this morning, along with the additional food I have, I feel good about what is potentially on the horizon. But I don't want to be panicking and needing to go to the grocery stores when there's nothing there. And you might be able to find something here, something there. Maybe if you have gold and silver or cash, you can buy your way buy extra food from people that have surpluses and things like that. But it'll be much more comfortable to be positioned when things start to happen rather than having to react uh, in an emergency reaction situation.
Yeah, and thank you for talking me off the cliff there because I was starting to. And I appreciate your calm voice and reminding me that of what's actually happening, and the truth of the matter is that economic laws still matter. They're called laws for a reason. They're not called economic speculations. They're called economic laws. And like you pointed out a moment ago, rhodium, you have platinum and palladium, you have these other metals that are either A, not as manipulated, or B, not manipulated at all the way that gold and silver are. And those are definitely foreshadowing what could potentially be on the horizon for the gold and silver market, as well as, the fact that, like we started the conversation, if preparedness is part of your everyday life at this point, then you're not in a panic. And that's the whole idea behind being prepared. That's the whole idea of behind having gold and silver and cash on hand, is so that you are able to think rationally and calmly when those around you are not. And not that you want to take advantage of them, you just want to be in a better position than they are and be able to help them if possible. And you don't want to be having to run out to the grocery store or to go anywhere if the community becomes quarantined. I mean, seriously, and that could happen. And that's what you want to avoid. And you want to be able to capitalize on on any situation after the storm passes, because the storm will pass. And if you are positioned properly, then you can be in a great place if you have remained calm, right? I mean, isn't that the way that it works?
It really is. I mean, look at people who panic sell the markets, panic buy the markets, fear of missing out. How many people bought Bitcoin 20,000 when they should have bought it at Bitcoin 1,000, right? Or same, just any market
Yep.
you can think of. People are they fail to act at the right times, and unfortunately, and I'm even susceptible to this. Here I am
Yes.
going to the grocery store while things are starting to get heated up. Now I do have some preparedness already, but I'm starting to get extra prepared because I feel the things starting to ramp up here. So it's much better to be positioned already and to watch things play out rather than having to react in the moment. Now, I don't want to discount being nimble in situations because that's obviously something that's very important. But being able to be positioned, especially in an emergency situation where you don't have to panic, that's a good spot for you, your family, your kids. And honestly, it's a way for you not to have to be exposed. I mean, especially when it comes to this virus. I mean, if you can minimize your exposure to the outside world, if things start to get a little over the top here, that's going to be better for you and your family.
Exactly. And remind people of the address for that report that you've just completed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rory. That's crushthestreet.com/virus. /virus.
Yeah, and just to echo what you were saying about Trader Steph, she's one of my favorites that of your team over there. I love her work. I think that she's one of the best voices out there, in my opinion, and love her work and republish as much of it as I can over at the Daily Coin. And we've been speaking with Mr. Kenneth Aemduri, who is the publisher of crushthestreet.com. He also has a YouTube channel, Crush the Street, as well, where he conducts incredible interviews. And Kenneth, I certainly appreciate all your time this morning.
Thank you, Rory, for having me on the show. Appreciate your time.
We will talk with you soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. That was great.